Good morning and welcome to Her Laundry Unfolded. I'm Wendy Babcock, your host, and this morning I'm joined with Carlee Myers. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm so excited. So when I saw your application specifically, I thought, I could probably have you on every single week because I think the topics you're going to cover is something that this year it kind of. So I think this interview is going to be watched a lot, to be honest.
It's definitely important work, that's for sure.
Yeah, and maybe I should have had you on earlier stages, but so I like to just jump right in. So I'm going to have you just go ahead and introduce yourself and tell everyone a little bit about who Carlee is.
Sure. So I'm Carlee Myers. I'm the founder of the Stress Less Company. And what I do is I work with female leaders who are feeling overworked and exhausted to find that sense of peace and freedom that they desire. And really, as a result of our work together, they learn how to not only deepen their spiritual connection, but also implement the key tactical tools so that they can experience more free time and efficiency and, yes, even prosperity in their lives.
That's awesome. Wow. And to me, that's like an umbrella over a lot of things. So what sort of things that you have to overcome in your life to get to this? Because, when you're dealing with such a big topic that, especially women, because my audience is majority, women, what sort of things, challenges that you have to overcome to get to this place where you're able to help others?
Yeah, so I always like to say when I get questions similar to this that you've just opened a can of worms.
Yeah, I kind of figured.
But there's the reason why the laundry is unfolded, right? So, I actually am doing the work that I'm doing today because of an experience that I had when I was a kid. So around the time I was 12 years old, a man was actually murdered in my home and my mom was shot 3 times.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And my mom, while she was not supposed to survive, the doctor said she had a 3% chance of living. She did.
Wow.
And she, if you saw her today, all she has is a pair of reading glasses and a slight limp, and that's it, which is wild. But while my mom basically made a full recovery, I really struggled for a long time. I struggled with the symptoms of PTSD, with stress, with overwhelm. I mean, you name it. I was struggling with it. I probably was struggling with it. And, I ended up struggling for 10 years. And on my journey, I think it was probably a few years in, I finally got the courage to reach out and to ask people. I would say things to people like, hey, I'm feeling kind of overwhelmed, or I'm kind of stressed, or I'm struggling a little bit right now. And I would ask people for advice. And it was like clockwork. I would get the same 5 or so responses every single time. Wow. Hey, Carlee, have you tried therapy? Have you tried yoga? Have you tried meditation? Have you tried changing your diet? Have you hit the gym recently? Right. And I got to take a bubble bath 100%. And while, the thing about that time is that I was so desperate for change that I had tried all of that, and when people would say that to me, it was like, no shit, Sherlock, pardon my French, but I was like, come on, who, you think I'm dumb here? We've all heard this stuff.
Well, and it's not like we're dealing with turning in a late assignment. We're talking about a major life traumatic event.
Mm-hmm. And that's the tool belt that was provided, right, when I asked for help. And so, I have to be honest, some of the stuff did not work at all. And some of it worked a little bit, but nothing ever got me over that hump where I was experiencing, happiness and joy and silliness and goofiness and all of those beautiful states of mind. The states of mind that I used to just roll my eyes at because I thought that they weren't real.
Of course.
And so, yeah. And so I ended up struggling as a result of continuing to show up and do things that didn't work for me. And I knew that they didn't work, but I thought that, well, maybe I'm not doing it right. Maybe I should go to a different yoga class. There was all of those, because it's working for the masses, supposedly. So why isn't it working for me? And so as a result, I kept showing up, doing that stuff. And I ended up struggling for 10 years until I found the thing that worked for me. And now, you know, I have to be honest, I've spent a few years being pissed off. I was not pleased after I found what worked for me. I was happy, I was content, but I was also like, why the heck isn't anybody talking about this? Why are we just saying these 5 or so mainstream approaches, and we're not, you know, we're not talking about the fact that there's no one size fits all. We're not talking about alternative ways to reduce stress. We're not talking about any of this. And so honestly, I spent a few years being pissed off about it. And then I had this kind of aha moment where I was like, oh crap, I'm supposed to talk about this.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because I know people that besides even like the mental aspect of stress and anxiety who are dealing with diseases and things that they're dealing with within their body, and they hear the same thing. Oh, just try some yoga, just try some meditation, take a bath. And it's like such a generalized thing where, yeah, if you've had a rough day, a bath might help. But we're not talking about just having a rough day. We're talking about life altering things, you know, that so many women have dealt with.
But even if we think about it from a smaller or a different perspective as well, we have a big fight with our partner. That's not trauma, but we can still get in that bubble bath and ruminate on that argument for the 45 minutes, right? And so we're really not getting to the root of what's really happening.
Right.
In many cases.
That's very true. And a lot of people, and I know myself, sometimes I can hold a grudge for days and I can spin it in my head and play it over and over and over where, you know, it's just on a cycle of repeat.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, you know, there's been studies that have shown that, for instance, exercise, for some people, it can be really helpful if they're coming from a perspective of mindfulness, like, right, I'm moving my feet, I'm moving my hands, and they're able to shift their thoughts away from whatever the trigger was. But they're finding in many cases, especially when we're at a irritated level of stress, we're irritated, we're angry, we're pissed off. When we go exercise, that in fact, it can make it worse. It can actually exacerbate our stress, because if we're on that run or we're doing whatever in the gym and we're thinking to ourselves that SOB, that right, and we're ruminating, that adrenaline and that the hormones that are moving through our body from exercise can actually make it worse, which is something that I don't think anybody's really talking about.
No, I don't think I've ever heard that, but it makes sense because, you know, I suppose if you're in a different state of mind when you're running, you're focusing on your body, your movements, whatever, that's a little, but when you're focused on that anger, yeah, I can see where that's just kind of keeping that cortisol pumping and, you know, it's making things worse for you.
100%. 100%.
Wow. So what did life look like then for you? So you talked about 10 years, you know, after with the PTSD, and sleep obviously is probably being affected. And what did that look like? You know,
the struggle, the years that I struggled, I have to say that the main thing that showed up for me was night terrors. So I was not able to sleep. And then when I would wake up, I would be, you know, on really bad nights, I'd be crying, I'd be shaking, I would be terrified to get out of my bed. And on, you know, other nights, it could be that I was just like, nope, like not getting out from under this bed. And during, or for under these covers. And during that time, I was going through my life exhausted. I was going through my life from a place of fear. Yeah. You know, I couldn't walk down the hall without being afraid. I was going through my life questioning whether I could trust people. Right. And so for me, and I think that I'm going to call it the rotten cherry on top was that the people and the resources and the spiritual resources even during that time weren't very helpful. Yeah. And so for me, it was, I'm asking for advice and I'm getting those 5 or so mainstream approaches, or I'm like desperately praying and for some reason I'm not getting a response and things aren't changing. And so that for me was rock bottom. It was like, not only are the people not helping, but I'm not getting any sort of spiritual relief from this experience. And that was a long, dark road for me.
I can only imagine. And then I can imagine what it did on your self-esteem and your confidence, where you're thinking, what's wrong with me? Instead of what's wrong with these things I'm trying, but what's wrong with me that they're not working? They work for everybody else. So what am I doing wrong?
because the 80%, right? Yes, meditation and yoga, like we hear these things all of the time. And we can even say, I can't tell you how many situations I've been in personally and with my clients where they finally say, you know, meditation's not working for me.
Yeah.
And the immediate response from someone else is, you haven't tried the right one, or you don't know how to do it. So you should try something different.
Right.
And that can be really, really harmful, because then it turns it away from, you know, what can we do, the actionable steps, to there's something wrong with me because this works for everybody else.
Right. And then I can imagine sitting in that place trying to do a new meditation and kind of questioning yourself instead of trying to get to that, you know, that peacefulness in yourself. You're like, oh gosh, what am I doing? I'm not doing it right. My brain's going, and now I can't get my brain to stop thinking. So it's not helping.
Or even worse, someone tells you to focus on your breath, and next thing you know, you're having a panic attack because you focused on your breath a little too much, right?
Right.
And so these are the experiences that I don't think we're talking about.
Yeah.
There is, you know, I think I could talk all day about what doesn't work, but it really kind of segues us into, well, then what the heck do we do? Like, if we know right now in this moment that meditation doesn't work for us as individuals, and if it does, keep it, please use it. But if it doesn't work for us, what do we do then? What's next? What's within our power to shift and change?
Right. So where were you then when you made that shift and change, when you realized, okay, this isn't working for me? Like, you know, what introduces kind of what does work for you?
Yeah. So after about 10 years, I finally met an incredible art teacher. And she was like, you have to make art. Like, she had no context of my background, no context of really much of anything. I think she knew a little bit, like, this is the girl who whatever happened, 10 years ago. But I grew up in a small town. I think everybody knew, but I don't think she really had the understanding of the depth of what was really going on. And she introduced me to art and creativity and painting. And I can tell you, I spent every moment I could possibly in her classroom. And for me, what was really interesting is I enjoyed it. First of all, I really enjoyed the process. But then I started to realize, like, the more I did it, I started to get some relief. And it wasn't just like, you know, for me, I started to, on my own time outside of class, I would sketch out my night terrors. And I was like, what? In my mind, I was like, well, these are crazy. I could be like a horror movie, like, director someday with this shit. Like, pardon my French, but like,
no, you're fine.
They're pretty intricate. These would be good stories. But, you know, in my free time, I was like, you know, I need to do something with this, because I'm not really I wasn't really comfortable going into the depths of what was happening in my dreams with other people. So I started sketching out my night terrors, and I would draw out my emotions, and I started creating abstract art around all of those feelings that I had. And it was crazy, because as I was doing it, slowly but surely, my night terrors started to go away. I started to feel like a functioning human being. Right? I started to feel more calm, content, less fear, all of this. And I was like, my mind was boggled. I was like, you mean drawing a freaking picture? Like, that's gonna be the thing? Yeah. Like, looking up at God, like, what this?
Right? It's been here the whole time.
Yes. If I would have known that, there's been a paper and a pen in my house my whole life. Like, really. But, you know, I think for me, that was just like the smaller piece of the puzzle. You know, it was just one piece of the bigger puzzle. When I got more mature, as I got older, I realized that it wasn't just art that could be the solution. It's actually many things. And so I ended up discovering and coining actually this term called creative stress reduction.
Wow.
And creative stress reduction is any activity. It doesn't matter what it is. Any activity that gets us out of fight, flight, or freeze mode and into a state of play or flow, or into that state of rest and digest. So it can be, you know, drawing. It could be going on a walk with your dog. It could be gardening. It could be cooking. It could be formatting an Excel spreadsheet. I don't care. It doesn't matter. But as long as it gets us into that state of play or flow. Because what I discovered is whenever I was making art, or whenever I was gardening as I got older, gardening's my thing now, right? Whenever I was doing those things, I was able to get to a grounded place where then from there, I could dig in and say, what is really causing me to get this triggered? What is really causing me to be stressed or overwhelmed or exhausted? And from a place of groundedness and a place of clarity, I could then move forward on really pulling out that stressor from the root.
Wow, that's awesome. And you touched on a few different things. That I have a daughter that really struggles with anxiety, depression, some PTSD from some traumatic things in her life. And what she's learned to do, because she's gone through some therapy, and she got to the place where she realized being in a group of people, her anxiety really goes. So she learned to knit. So now she brings her knitting stuff, and that brings her focus. So she's always like, "Don't, I'm just sorry. And she tells everyone like that my anxiety's up. So if I can just knit, then that keeps her focused and it keeps her calm."
Yep. 100% creative stress reduction right there. And it is that grounding factor. But she, for her, bringing, doing something else may not work. Like,
right.
I can't even think of an example, but, something that's not knitting might not work. But knitting is a beautiful example because she doesn't have to take time away. She doesn't have to excuse herself or avoid those situations.
Right.
But she has a tool that she can bring with her. And that's, that's the thing that, again, another thing that we're not really talking about. We often think that when it comes to managing our stress, we have to remove ourselves completely from the situation and kind of be in isolation and recuperate that way. But when we're thinking about creative stress reduction, it really doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be that way at all.
Yeah, and she's when she was going through her therapy, and her therapist weren't communicating well, I don't know how to put it, but like they weren't speaking the same language, so to speak.
Yeah.
Jennifer, my daughter, couldn't explain. She didn't have the words. And so the therapist said, okay, why don't you bring in your art and basically show me? And so that's what she would do. Is she would, then they figured it out and they could move forward because she was able to put her feelings and what she was going through basically on paper.
Yeah, 100%. It's really interesting because as a society, we are like, our society can kind of create this pressure cooker, if you will, or this expectation that we push down our feelings. We pick ourselves up by the bootstraps. We don't have time for that. We got to get stuff done. We got to do X, Y, and Z. We have to meet this expectation or whatever it is. And then because of the way society is cradling us or nurturing us, we lose that ability to communicate, or if we have the ability, the fear that we'll be judged or the fear that we'll be misunderstood or cast away can really cause some serious roadblocks in our journey. I know for me, 100%, I was like, if anybody ever found out what my dreams were about, I'd be in a psychiatric hospital in 3.5 seconds. Like, no question about it. But the reality is that creative stress reduction can be a tool that can help us open up, because the opening up is the thing that will free us at the end of the day, whether it's just being honest with ourselves or with another human being.
Right. And actually, I have this behind me because I always like to keep her kind of what I'm thinking about stuff. So this is a piece. I know people who are just going to listen aren't going to be able to see this, but she made this for me because when my girls were growing up and, they would stress about a homework assignment, and I'd always say, okay, well, can you fix it right now? No. I'm like, okay. So I'd always tell them to put it in a bubble and blow it away because you can't fix it right now. So she had drawn me this picture of, herself with all the bubbles around her. So
that's beautiful.
It's just kind of like a temporary, just for minor things, not,
So, yeah. I love that. Because it goes back from, one of the conversations, especially right now, that I've been having with a lot of clients is the control versus the lack of control. Like, is this within my control to change my actions, to do something about it? Or is it outside of my control? And I think that's where the spiritual component really comes in for me and my clients. If this item is out of my control, for instance, can I do anything about this homework right now?
Right.
No, it's outside of my control. It's really, in order to find, and it looks, by the way, spirituality looks different for everyone. It can be, higher self. It can be the greater good, just believing that people are good at the end of the day. It can be God, the universe. It doesn't matter what it is. It can be the bubble, and that's it. But when we are able to hand off the things that are outside of our control to some sort of spiritual undefined thing, whatever it is for you, that can enable us to start getting out of fight or flight mode, relaxing a little bit, and focusing on the things that are within our control. Like making sure that we are prepared for whatever homework assignment is going to come up because we're organized. We've got the plan laid out, whatever it is. And I think the control versus lack of control, your bubble example is a beautiful, simple example of how you can do that.
Right. Yeah. And they always thought I was kind of silly, but I'm like, okay, so you forgot your book. You don't have it. You can't fix it till you go to school tomorrow. So there's no sense in staying awake all night, getting sick to your stomach. And, just kind of free yourself of that thought. And I know it's hard to do. It's easier said than done, of course. It's kind of like people like, just think positive. And no, that's not going to fix it.
Yeah.
Because I've done motivational speaking, I've gotten kind of people like, well, you're just preaching, just think positive. I'm like, no, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying having a positive mental attitude is great, not just think positive and there'll be sunshine and rainbows around you. It's like, no, that's not at all what's going to help people.
Absolutely. Because denial is sometimes the thing that keeps us in struggle.
Right.
For sure.
And so it's more about preaching, like, trying to be more of a problem solver instead of like a problem thinker.
Mm-hmm.
When you're just focusing on the problem, you're trying to find a solution.
For instance, I did a training for a public speakers association recently on how to manage stress.
Okay.
Pre-speaking engagement, during and post. And so, thinking about a fear of crowds, right?
Oh, yeah.
Thinking about that. What happens if and we can take our mindset and go through all of those fears, and that's okay. That's totally normal. But we can also take that fear of crowds and we can say, there's two things we can do. The first thing we can do is go through those fears and say, okay, what's the worst case scenario? How can I prepare for it? Which is probably a good idea. So you don't, for instance, if you're afraid you're going to forget everything you say, maybe bring some note cards. Fear is good. Like that stress can help.
Yeah.
But the second thing is we need to really move into, okay, well, no, actually, yes, thank you subconscious for all of that. Thank you, ego mind, for the, for those, because I'm now prepared, but also really, how are the crowds serving me? Well, without a bunch of people watching or in the room, I don't have visibility. And if I don't have visibility, I don't have necessarily expert status. And if I don't have expert status, perhaps I'm not really growing my business. People aren't going to trust you to buy anything. And so we went through, there's okay, thank you, subconscious mind. I'm going to prepare now, but also here are the reasons that I should be grateful for this stressor. Because it's actually the thing that's priming me to be able to reach the goals that I want in my business or in my life.
Oh, that's awesome. I love that. And that makes so much sense because now that speakers are moving more into a virtual world, for us, or at least for me, it's more challenging because I like the feedback from the audience. Even if they're not speaking, it's the energy in that room, seeing like their eyes and that they're focused. To me, that feedback is so important. So I totally, that makes a lot of sense before you get on stage, like, okay, this audience is going to, respond, and it's going to be a great thing for both of us it's a mutual benefit that way. Yeah,
100%. And using the virtual example, I had a conversation the other day with a woman who was frustrated that everybody's cameras were off and everybody's mute, like there was not the engagement.
Yeah.
And I said, well, that's such an interesting stressor. Your subconscious mind, your ego mind or whatever is trying to tell you something.
Yeah.
That you have a request, you have an ask of the audience. And so from that stressor, what she realized is that before she speaks, she has a request of the audience to, if you can, please turn on your video. If you can, I ask that you give me thumbs up, A-OKs, things like that when I'm asking questions, so that she could still have that energetic exchange, which was such an aha for her. That, wait a second, I don't just have to accept this as it is, I can prepare.
Right. Oh, that's brilliant. I mean, sometimes we don't think of those simple, small requests that, you can say, please leave your cameras on because I might ask some questions. I can see your hand then. I can see. That makes so much sense. I love that.
Yeah. It was a beautiful example. It's so interesting because we oftentimes stress gets a bad rep, right? We hear about all of the symptoms and, whether it's headaches, insomnia, anxiety, depression, cardiovascular disease, all of the stuff. But that's really distress. We're not really talking about eustress, which is stems from the word euphoria. It's good stress.
Okay.
It's the stress that serves us and rising to the occasion. And it's all, any specific trigger, any situation could be either. It just depends on what's happening here and what you've trained your mind to see. Have you trained your mind to see distress, or have you trained your mind to see eustress? Right. And what's crazy about the difference between those two is that distress creates a specific physiological response where your blood vessels are actually they're constricting. So your blood's having trouble flowing through your body. Your oxygen's having trouble getting to your brain. You have trouble focusing. But eustress, when you view your stress as a good thing, your blood vessels actually expand. So your blood's able to get through your body, your oxygen's able to get to your brain, and you're able to rise to the occasion even more. And you totally sidestep all of those crazy symptoms that, we all hear about all the time.
Right. Oh gosh, that makes so much sense. Because I had learned a trick too. If I was feeling nervous and getting butterflies, someone said, instead of thinking of it as stress, it's excitement. You're excited to bring this to the audience. Yeah. And I did find that before I heard that, if I was really nervous, I found I'd stumble on my words a little more. Like I just maybe it was that oxygen or something, I couldn't get the words out. But then when I changed how I thought, no, I'm just really excited. This isn't nerves. I'm just super excited to meet the audience. And I just feel like those were my best presentations.
Yep. Well, because it's energy, excitement and stress can actually show up energetically the same in the body. And so it's still just choosing between distress and eustress, because energetically you still might have your heart racing, right? You still might sweat, but it's that small shift. It's really fascinating.
Right. Wow. So where did all of this bring you to? Because it just seems like there's this huge aha moment with the art and how it's helping with your stress. So how does this unfold for you then?
I have this aha. I realize a few years later that this is just the small piece of the bigger puzzle, and that creative stress reduction is really the foundation. We have to get out of fight, flight, or freeze mode in order to think strategically in our lives. So for me, once I was able to figure out how to just get out of that triggered state, how to get out of fight or flight mode, it became, okay, let's look at, go through, I have this thing called the stress less method. And it's really a unique methodology that I myself went through to get to the root of my stressors, the things that I have control over, right? Whether it was toxic relationships. Okay, let's see what we can do there. Whether it was money, whether it was whatever. And so I went through, to be clear, I was continually doing creative stress reduction as needed. But then I had the strength, I had the clarity, I had the groundedness to really go through and say, this, and this area of my life is causing chronic stress. It's causing unnecessary stress that I have control over. And I've just been too afraid or too exhausted or too whatever to be able to finally address it. And so I started addressing these things one by one, baby step by baby step. And I'm still a work in progress, like everybody else on this planet. Yeah. And, I've continued that journey. And then, talking about the spiritual piece, I've developed a spiritual relationship that serves me, so that when something that is out of my control, that I can't put in my plan and execute and change, I can hand that off and say, you know what, that one's on your court. I'm not God. I'm not trying to handle this. I'm not the universe, here you go. I'll do my stuff. You do yours. And it's really helped me in my journey to find a sense of freedom, a sense of peace, be in that beautiful state of mind more times than not.
Wow. And I think you touched on something that maybe people don't get to. I have a little bit of a feedback, but anyways, doing the art is if that gets you out of things, getting to that deeper part, I think that's a piece that a lot of people don't attempt to do. We can sugarcoat it for now. We'll deal with it later.
Yep. Yeah. Well, I think what happens is a lot of times we'll go get a facial, or we'll go get a massage, or we'll get our nails done, or we'll take that bubble bath and we'll feel better. We'll get that instant relief, right, or at least feel a little better. We go from misery to mild pain, right? And we think like, what, I'm good enough. I can get back to work. I can get back to what I want to do. Right. But the reality is we still have this irritator in our lives. And that's the real deep work. This is the stuff that, this is why clients hire me, because they're ready. They know how to, creative stress reduction. That's the easy part.
Mm-hmm.
But how do we really dig in and, first of all, create a spiritual relationship or deepen that? A lot of us have spiritual trauma where we've gone through something hard and we've said, please, somebody, like, are you there? Listen, I need help. And we felt like we were shouting into the ether. It's like sending an email, no one responding. Right.
Right.
And so, they hire me to help navigate first that, and also to navigate the stuff that perhaps we're afraid to really admit and see and look at and do the work to get to that place. Because this is not for the faint of heart. This journey is most certainly is not for the faint of heart. And that's why, the statistics show, right? 80% of people in the US are afflicted by stress. And those are pre-COVID stats.
Yeah. I can't even imagine what it is right now.
Me either.
So you've gotten into, I'm assuming, coaching then. When you say you work with clients, is that more company-based or is that individual-based, or do you do both?
So we are predominantly an education company with a mentorship aspect. So the 7-step methodology that I mentioned earlier is really the foundation that every client that works with us goes through to help them figure out what uniquely works for them. And they have a structure that they follow. But throughout their learnings and throughout that education process, they are able to come to myself or to the other mentors at the Stress Less company to say, I'm confused here. I'm stuck here. I need support. What do you have you been there? And what can you recommend? And so for us, it's really starts with the education piece, because we don't know what we don't know. And then from there, getting the support to implement it and to create those changes. Or how does this education really apply to me?
Right. Because I'm thinking as you're speaking, I think what you're teaching would benefit, especially my daughter. She's 24 now, and, she's gotten to where she knows that art is a huge de-stressor for her, and that really helps her. But I think she even knows there's a deeper thing that she needs to work on still. Yep. And she's done the counseling, so she has a lot of tools in her back pocket and all that. But I think she's at the point where your company is something that really could benefit her at this point.
Yeah, 100%. And I think I would just mention that a lot of the clients that come to me have been there, right? They've done the therapy, they've done the counseling, they feel like they've got that good tool belt, but they're looking for that next step, that something more, so that they can get to that even more beautiful state of mind. Right. Because like we were talking about earlier, it was like, okay, well, am I in deep misery, or am I in, okay, this is kind of uncomfortable. And I think most of my clients come to me where they're just like, this is uncomfortable. I'm kind of tired of it. Can we please do something about it now?
Right.
Can we figure this out? But yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I wonder, like, okay, so when you have a new client come on board, so I'm just going to use my daughter because I know her well, of course. Some things are actually paralyzing for her. Simple things, adulting tasks, making the phone call to make an appointment at the doctor's office could be paralyzing, to where, she just like, will put it off. Because if she thinks about it, it's too scary to do. So I'm just not going to think about it. I'm going to turn my back to it. It doesn't exist. So how does a client start with you then? Because I think everyone listening too would like to know, what are the steps? They get in touch with you. Make sure I have your website there, right? stresslessco.com.
Yeah. So in order to get in touch with me, you would visit stresslessco.com/apply for the opportunity to, to apply for a complimentary stress assessment, where we really go in and we look at, first of all, we're going to get into what's really causing the exhaustion or the overwork or the stress in your life. And I will listen really deeply. I will hold space. And then from there, together, we really get to the root. We determine exactly why you haven't found that peace and freedom that you desire yet, right? And then from there, should that individual decide to work with me, we really go through the Stress Less method. So we start with, for example, the first step is to deepen our spiritual understanding. And so we go through and we decide, we go through, okay, well, what have we believed in the past? What has worked? What hasn't? Do we believe in anything? Are we angry? Are we, good? Are we set? And we start there because it is the foundation of everything that I teach, because there's so much that is that is outside of our control. So that's the first place that we start. And thinking about your daughter and anxiety and just like picking up the phone to make a doctor's appointment.
Yeah.
That is something that I'm sure she's worked with her therapist on to try to do something about.
Right.
And at this point, she has shown up consistently. She's like, all right, I'm going to therapy every week. I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And that's something that at the first step can really help with, because at this point it goes, well, okay, I'm showing up. It's your turn. Whatever this undefined spiritual thing is, it's your turn, so that we can collaborate on this, so that we can move forward. And then, going in through some of the other steps, the second step is to identify your blocks, because a lot of us don't even know what's stopping us from being happy or being content or at peace or feeling free. Right. Because oftentimes we just say, oh yeah, it's my boss, or it's my money, or, we just like tack on stuff. But the reality is that we have blocks that are not only distancing our spiritual relationship, but are also keeping us moving in old patterns. Like, for instance, we may believe because we had a crappy parent growing up, or a parent that was a little too hard on us, that we're not good enough, that we're not smart. And that subconscious belief shows up in our lives in behaviors. We don't even have to consciously think it. Let's say a job comes up and it pays, I don't know, 6 figures. And we immediately think to ourselves, well, I'm not qualified for that. I'm not smart enough for that. And we don't apply. And so we go through, that's just an example of a limiting belief that might be a block. But we go through and we create an inventory and say, what is blocking you? So that we can, go to step 4. I'm skipping a few steps, but go to step 4, which is, let's get rid of them. Let's pull them out from the root. Let's do what we have control over to create the real change in our lives.
Right. And I think, like, with those blocks, especially, people aren't living their lives. It is to that point, the exhaustion of, the worry, the anxiety, I'm not good enough feeling, it's easier just to lay in bed all day and sleep instead of like kind of conquering it, because I don't know what to do next.
And what's interesting is that we find, especially with step 4, which is to remove the blocks, is that when we really dig in, the first step is really not that hard. It's really like something that takes us a few minutes, almost always something that will take us a few minutes to get the process started. And after getting it started, we feel like a ton of bricks has been lifted from us, and I work my own steps constantly. I just had a conversation with my dad about why my parents are divorced, about why they got divorced. Right. And that was something, a block for me that was subconscious, that was sitting and weighing. And I finally got to step 4 on that for myself. And I sat down and was like, Dad, what happened?
Yeah.
And I realized, holy crap, having that conversation let me let go of so many limiting beliefs, so many ways in which I viewed the world that didn't serve me. And it was such a freeing experience to be able to do that. 5 minutes. That's it.
That's incredible. I think about this stuff, and we do day to day as adults, and we may not even connect the dots. Like, oh, this is why I do that. And like, okay, so I have a block, so now what? So I think somebody working with you, I think, would have a lot of aha moments. That's what I picture. A lot of, oh my gosh, seriously?
Yeah.
That's
like,
awesome.
Darn it. Yeah, for sure.
Right. That's just, oh my God, I'm so excited about this. And I hope people reach out to you at thestresslessco.com/apply. I just think those aha moments are going to be so clarifying for people and lift those weights off of people and let them actually live their lives.
Yeah, 100%.
That's fantastic. Oh my God, I'm just so excited that you came on today, because I think in our world right now, I mean, like you said, pre-COVID, the stress levels were through the roof already. Now, we're coming back into fall again, where they're talking about we might have a resurgence and things kind of get bad again. I think that's weighing on people. So
Yeah.
that's just on top of all of our daily stress, paying the bills, raising kids, just getting day to day. And now you've got this huge looming weight of COVID on us. And so I think,
and e-learning and
e-learning. Yeah, my sister's doing that with hers as well. And well, they're actually in school, but if they get sick, they can do the e-learning if they're home. So, but very important, incredible work you're doing. Super exciting.
Thank
so
you.
Thank you so much for coming on today. So everyone, if you want to connect with Carlee, make sure you go to stresslessco.com/apply if you'd like to look into working with Carlee or a member of her team, because she's created this amazing company, which I just think is fantastic. Talk about finding success, coming through all of your challenges. So congratulations for, finding that success.
Thank you so much. And thank you for having me on the show. This was really fun.
Yeah, no, I can't wait for this one. So this gets uploaded to YouTube. And then I also pulled the audio to the actual podcast as well. So people can find you on Facebook, whatever podcast they listen to, and then also on YouTube. So
beautiful.
Yeah. Well, thank you again, Carlee. I'm so excited. So I'm getting a few comments here. So thanks again. I hope you have a wonderful day. And everyone else, I'll see you next Monday at 11 a.m. Central Standard Time. Thanks, guys. Bye.